Alright, so we've got a King 601 that we're going to be doing some work on. Has a rather dented and warped bell. We're going to see if we can straighten that out. It's also got a small crack in the bell. Where is it? It's right here. You can see right there, there's some cracking there, so that will probably play into trying to repair this without making any of the cracking worse. We've also got a few dents up here. We've got a dent in the back. The back dent, we're going to probably see if we can freeze it out, as I don't have any dent balls. And then this solder joint is loose, so we're going to reflow that solder joint. Here are the tools we're going to use. We're going to use a bell flare mandrel, and then also a stem mandrel. These are both just the universal trumpet and cornet mandrels. You can get them on ferries. They have an online site now. They used to just have a catalog you had to call to order the parts through, but so you can go. I'll put a link in the description for if you want to buy the tools. They're kind of pricey, but if you want to do a good job, especially on a flare, you need something to work off of. So we'll go ahead and we're going to start off by working on there. We're going to try to get this rim flattened out, rolled down, and then we'll work with either a burnishing bar if you have one, or a nice smooth piece of metal. Anything would work. I'm going to use the stem mandrel. Probably not the best thing to use if you want to keep your tools beautiful, but it works pretty well. And then we'll work through trying to get out some of these creases here. After we get the flare worked out, we'll go ahead and try to get some of the detail work done up here. I'm going to use a piece of leather and then a brass mallet to go ahead and just start knocking the edge down here. Once we've got that done, I'm going to use my burnishing bar to just start working around and getting some of these creases out here. And they make actual burnishing tools that probably would fit in a little bit easier to use, but I spent all my money buying the mandrel, so we'll make work with what we've got here. Now we've got the edge flattened down a bit. You can look, it's more consistent along the bottom. This is pretty wavy before. We're going to go ahead and just start burnishing out some of the creases that were on there before. Once again, I'm going to just be using this mandrel. It's hardened stainless steel, so it shouldn't have any problem working on this brass. It shouldn't damage it at all. And I just go in a circle, work around, specifically kind of want to start where the creases are, so here, let's get a close-up. So right here we can see a crease. You can see where it's catching the light there. We're going to go ahead and start working on that, and we'll just go in a circular pattern around the whole thing. And I've actually already started a little bit of work before I started filming, so you can look at the first clip. You can see it was worse than it is currently. I already started getting it smoothed out. But we'll go ahead and I'll just start working in a circle around it. So here are the cracks we're working on. We're working on this one. It kind of starts up here, comes all the way down to there. There's this one. You couldn't really see it too well because there was a crease along where it was. And then there's one other one. Let me find it. It's along the edge somewhere here. Here it is. Just right there. There's a little crack. I'm not sure exactly what's caused it. It's probably just the metal bending too many times. So we're going to try to get some solder in here. The metal's pretty thin, so I don't think I'm going to be using silver solder. I'll be using just a conventional solder. Get some flux in there and see if we can get something to flow into it. We ideally want it to just fill in the crack itself and really not create a flow over top of it. So that way, once it is cleaned off and just is allowed to patina for a bit, it won't stand out too much. It's just going to be the line, hopefully. So let's see what we can get done with the solder. We'll be attempting a few different torches. We'll see. Here's a little torch here. Because it's the bell and it's pretty thin, I feel like we should be able to work with that. If not, we've got a bigger torch that we can use as needed. So we can see, let's just actually go in here. We can see we got the solder to come through. You look at the crack on the other side, you can see there's some solder that's come all the way through, which is good. We'll put a little bit of flux and flow it from this side to try to make it look a little prettier. Here's going to be pretty much the finished product on the bell. I was able to flatten out that ridge a lot. It still is slightly bent up in a few places, but I was dealing with some issues because that crack that I had seen, let's see if we can get it to focus here, that crack ran all the way down and it keeps going down. If you can look carefully, you can see it right there. And then it looks like it's not quite broken through there. So what I've done on this one, on this particular, the bigger crack, and then also this one, is we went ahead and took some solder and created, let's see if we can get this light better. Okay, so I flowed some solder into the cracking from this side and from this side and made a little pool there, because it's hard to get the solder to pull through such a fine crack. And then I put a little flux on that side and a little flux on this side, and then just took that little blowtorch and heated right along the crack. And as it heated up, you can just see the solder wick through from the other side. So that should stop this from doing any buzzing or having any resonance there. And that pretty much gets this bell into decent shape. No significant warping. It's still a little bit patinaed, as you can see, but that's not a bad look. We're gonna start working on these top dents. I already did a little bit. I'm using this wrench for a burnishing bar. It's got kind of a nice rounded side. It's very smooth. So it works a little bit better for the finer work, where you don't have to put quite as much pressure as you might to get a smooth pattern on the bell flare. So we'll go ahead and get this straightened out and then solder up that joint, and then we'll be about where we want to be. I'm going to go ahead and actually remove this brace here. It's getting in the way, and I see down in here we've got some denting, so I want to just get that out of the way so I can go ahead and burnish out that dent along here. I'll clean up the solder joints and then I'll just attach it back. When I go ahead and loosen this piece, I want to try to make sure I'm not melting the solder joint here. So I'll just start along here at the top, and I'll just gently work my way down, and hopefully that takes this off pretty easily. And then I'll just solder it back on once I'm all done. Alright, we got those two dents out. It's not perfect, you can see a little bit there, and there might be a few edges I'm going to try to clean up right now, but got them out, and I got this straightened out, but it was a pretty tight bend in there, so I don't know if I'll be able to get that part perfect. We'll see. I'm going to get some up-close soldering of this final crack that I'm going to repair. It just has a little bit of a buzz to it, so I want to make sure it's just sealed up. So we're going to start off by getting some flux in there, and then we'll just add a little bit of solder. We'll clean up around the edges and hopefully make it look pretty nice. I had misplaced my solder, so here we are. And we're going to heat up the top bit to temperature. We want it to just ideally bead right onto there. There we go. As a general rule, solder will follow the heat. Kind of running down on me, which is not the biggest deal. To take care of any solder that kind of gets in the way, you can just heat it up to temperature and just flick it off with a dry paper towel. It's important to use a dry paper towel because if you start using a wet paper towel, it will just cool off the part, and then you aren't going to be able to flick it off anymore because the solder will solidify. I'm going to call it on the bell for now. We don't want it to look like it doesn't match the horn. So there's some lacquer patching here and there, but we aren't going to be cleaning that off. We're just leaving it as is. So that main twist was removed. We got all the cracks have been patched up to the point where they no longer buzz. And then on the inside of the bell, it's much more consistent looking. Those are just two lacquer spots there. The bottom and on the right, and then on the left there's a solder. And then we were able to get that solder to wick up there. So that doesn't buzz anymore. Now at this point, all that's left to do is see if we can get that dent out of the end. Oh yeah, I soldered this all up. So that brace is all back in there. We're gonna try to do a little trick that people use on dirt bikes, which is you fill it with some water and some Murphy's oil soap, and you freeze it, and the water expanding pops out the dent. But I've had limited success. Sometimes it works great, other times it doesn't really do anything. So we'll give it a shot and we'll report back. I've got some water in the bell now, probably from around here to around there is filled. I've got the area with the dent wrapped with some insulator, just a piece of rag. The idea behind that is if this part freezes first, the expansion will just go down the pipes, which I don't want. So I would ideally want this side to freeze, this side to freeze, and then the liquid water still to be left in the middle. And then when that freezes, it will expand and it will go ahead and push out the dent from the inside. So I'll just close it up in here, leave it for an hour or so, and then come back and check and we'll see if it's done anything. I removed the rag about halfway through just because I wanted to check on it. I hadn't done anything yet, so let's see. Oh, look at that. It's actually pretty good. We just used that profile. It pretty much took the dent completely out. So I'll thaw it all out now and buff it a little bit to blend that patch in because it has a little bit of a marking where it used to be. And I think it'll be good to go. All right, nice stuff. The final product. Straighten that bell out pretty well. I did a final just touch up with a bit of brass, so that way it's a consistent finish the whole way through and it will age well. It'll patina back to being just like the rest of the horn. So although it's shinier right now, give it a month or two and it will all be looking like the old part of the horn. Here are where those two dents were, right? It's not focusing, here we go. Right along here is where those two dents were. Those are gone. That was the dent in the back. Came out pretty well. It's not quite as round as the rest, but it's pretty good there. And then here's that crack that's been soldered up. If you look really closely, you can see that the silver has gone into the crack there. So it wicked all the way through here, this one, down to that one. And then this one really wasn't deep enough. Let's see if I can shade it a bit. That one right there wasn't quite deep enough to wick up any solder, so I don't think it should cause any issues. It wasn't doing any buzzing. And then there's this one. That one was also fixed up. And then all of these dark patches are just lacquer that's still on the horn. Just like up here, you can look through it. There's kind of darker patches wherever the lacquer is that hasn't worn off yet. It's a pretty good looking horn. I like it.